Gun safety advocates and members of Congress held a rally outside the Supreme Court protesting the NRA-backed lawsuit on a repealed New York handgun regulation. Speakers voiced their opposition to the NRA, called for tougher gun laws, and shared stories about the impact of gun violence.
Good morning, everybody. Hey, one more time. Good morning, everybody. All right. Everybody get this party started. First thing, put your right hand up. Put your left hand up. Give yourselves a round of applause for being out in the cold this morning. All right. We're going to be loud all day long. Because one, we're in front of the Supreme Court, and two, we got some haters here. So give me loud one more time. Let me hear you. All right. I love it. All right, my name is Greg Jackson. I'm going to be your MC for today. First of all, big shout out to March for Our Lives for kicking us off. Give it up for March for Our Lives. I see Moms and Man Action here. Give it up for Moms and Man Action. I see Everytown here. Give it up for Everytown. I see Brady here. Where Brady at? Yeah! All right. Hey, we're here in numbers. We're so proud. I'm Greg Jackson with Community Justice Action Fund. So proud of being here and having you all here. Before we get started, there are a lot of people who did not survive gun violence that could not be here today. So we're going to have a moment of silence for those who lost their lives to gun violence right now.
A well-regulated militia is necessary to the security of the free state. Wow. The right of the people.
Guy, rude. That's
really ugly. Please respect the Constitution.
All right, we're back at it. Thank you guys so much for that moment of silence. And I appreciate you all respecting those that could not be here today. And we see exactly where the opposition stands when it comes to losing life in this country. Yeah. Exactly. So I got one. We'll be talking to you all day, but when I say enough, I want you to say it's enough. Okay, so let's practice one time. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. Every year, over 100,000 people are either shot or killed by gun violence. And we are here to stand for those folks today. We have an amazing group of people here who are going to speak about the importance of ending gun violence and how guns laws save lives. So we're going to hear from them all day long. But if we ever hear the haters get too loud, what are we going to say? Enough! 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 Awesome, awesome. So you're going to hear from me a lot today. I'm not going to talk too much. But in 2013, I was shot about a mile from here from gun violence. And every day people are plagued by gun violence. Here in Washington, D.C., over 150 people have been shot this year. Some people who have passed from gun violence were not necessarily a part of that. One of my mentees, Karan Brown, was only 10 years old when he was shot down in Southeast, only 2 miles away from here at a McDonald's. 2 weeks after he led his own gun violence prevention rally, just like today. And so I'm here to stand for Karan. I'm here to stand for everyone who could not be here today, who are fighting every day to reduce violence in their own unique ways. So I want to thank you guys for being here. Give yourselves one more round of applause. I love it. I love it. All right. So we're going to introduce our first speaker, Kelly Sampson, who is with Brady Council, Constitutional Litigation, Legal Alliance, and Racial Justice. Give it up for Kelly!
I'm here as a proud member of Team Brady, where I'm counsel for constitutional litigation, legal alliance, and racial justice. I'm a DC resident, and I'm a native Detroiter. When I was a little girl, I used to imagine how my life would be different if only I lived in the suburbs. I imagined being able to freely ride my bike, hang out with my friends whenever I wanted, and go to the store at any time of day. Don't get me wrong, the Detroit of my youth wasn't nearly as warlike as the media would have you believe, but I can't deny that gun violence was and is a real problem. Lurking behind my sweetest childhood memories, like curling up with my favorite book, dressing my dolls, and playing board games with my family, lies anxiety, like hiding in the basement every New Year's Eve to avoid stray bullets, fleeing from a fireworks celebration when gunfire broke out, and interacting with merchants who stood behind bulletproof glass. As a kid, I used binaries to understand the world around me. There was good, there was bad. There was fun, and there was boring. There was safe, and there was dangerous. And under these binaries, I couldn't help but imagine that if I lived in the suburbs, my life would be better. Because from what I could tell, kids there didn't have to arrange their lives around being shot like I did. That was then. This is now. And I know, like you know, that gun violence, which includes suicide, homicide, mass violence, and domestic violence, happens everywhere. And that's why I'm here today. Because we have the right not to be shot. And that's not just rhetoric. The Second Amendment is not supreme. It's just one of the many rights and privileges laid out in the Constitution. The Second Amendment comprises just 27 of the Constitution's 7,591 words. And those words, the Declaration of Independence, case law, and our entire system of government make it clear that our rights are not unlimited. I can't do whatever I want, whenever I want, however I want, if it's going to endanger someone else. This rally is a perfect example. In speaking to you today, I'm exercising my First Amendment right to free speech, but that doesn't mean I have the right to use my time here to incite the crowd to mob violence. That will go beyond the scope of the right. The Second Amendment is no different. And courts, indeed the Supreme Court, has made it clear that the right to keep and bear arms is not unlimited. The government has authority to pass reasonable regulations to protect our right not to be shot and uphold public safety. When I was a kid, I could hold on to the idea that I could avoid the gun violence that plagued my city simply by moving a few miles outside of town. Today's kids don't even have that. They know that gun violence is a menace to leafy suburbs and concrete jungles, mountain villages and beach towns, lonely apartments and classrooms. So they're asking us to do something to protect their right not to be shot. There's no constitutional reason why we can't listen.
All right, everybody, give it up for Kelly. When I say gun laws, you say save lives. Ready? Gun laws. 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 Oh, we're going to remix it. You guys going to say gun laws. You guys say save lives. Ready? Gun laws. Save lives. Save lives. Save lives. Save lives. Save lives. That was awesome. That was awesome, guys. All right. Please give a big round of applause for our next speaker from March for Our Lives. Give it up for Tatiana Washington from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Hi, everyone. I hope that every single one of you are proud of yourselves. It is so beautiful to look out and to see all of you. What we are doing here today is valid and it's bigger than ourselves. But today I want to speak specifically to my peers, and within doing so, I hope that my words will encourage generations before me to understand why those who look like me, play Fortnite, or spend hours watching and making TikTok videos' voices are vital in this movement. So to my fellow youth, do not listen to anyone that tries to dismiss you and your voice because your resilience is urgent. We are here fighting because nearly 100 people die from guns every day. We are fighting because Sandra Parks can't. We are fighting because Trayvon Martin can't. We are fighting because Tate Jackson can't. We are fighting because Tamir Rice can't. We are fighting because Sherida Davis can't. The last name was my aunt. She was shot in her chest, her stomach, and her leg by her husband, who then turned the gun on himself. Their two children, who were then 8 and 12 at the time, were present at the time when this tragedy happened, and my then 12-year-old cousin performed CPR on his mother, but she later died in the hospital. And even though gun violence has broken my family, I am not anti-gun. Both of my parents are law enforcement officers, and I grew up with guns in my house. But I also understand that none of us deserve to be shot. We have the right to not be shot. And as I've been grieving my aunt's death, I keep asking myself, what happened to the American dream? Children, little children are losing time out of their school day to practice what to do when someone decides to turn a sacred space for education into a murder scene. Black and brown youth are terrified of being gunned down by those who are supposed to serve and protect us. What is the American dream? We have the right to not be shot. To my youth, our age does not limit our power. Throughout history, youth have always had an important role in making a change. It has been said that the duty of youth is to challenge corruption.
That was awesome. That was awesome, guys. All right, please give a big round of applause for our next speaker from March for Our Lives. Give it up for Tatiana Washington from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Hi, everyone. I hope that every single one of you are proud of yourselves. It is so beautiful to look out and to see all of you. What we are doing here today is valid and it's bigger than ourselves. But today I want to speak specifically to my peers, and within doing so, I hope that my words will encourage generations before me to understand why those who look like me, play Fortnite, or spend hours watching and making TikTok videos, voices are vital in this movement. So to my fellow youth, do not listen to anyone that tries to dismiss you and your voice because your resilience is urgent. We are here fighting because nearly 100 people die from guns every day. We are fighting because Sandra Parks can't. We are fighting because Trayvon Martin can't. We are fighting because Tate Jackson can't. We are fighting because Tamir Rice can't. We are fighting because Sherda Davis can't. The last name was my aunt. She was shot in her chest, her stomach, and her leg by her husband, who then turned the gun on himself. Their two children, who were then 8 and 12 at the time, were present at the time when this tragedy happened, and my then 12-year-old cousin performed CPR on his mother, but she later died in the hospital. And even though gun violence has broken my family, I am not anti-gun. Both of my parents are law enforcement officers, and I grew up with guns in my house. But I also understand that none of us deserve to be shot. We have the right to not be shot. And as I've been grieving my aunt's death, I keep asking myself, what happened to the American dream? Children, little children are losing time out of their school day to practice what to do when someone decides to turn a sacred space for education into a murder scene. Black and brown youth are terrified of being gunned down by those who are supposed to serve and protect us. What is the American dream? We have the right to not be shot. To my youth, our age does not limit our power. Throughout history, youth have always had an important role in making a change. It has been said that the duty of youth is to challenge corruption, and that's exactly what we are doing here today. And I urge you to continue doing that. So never, ever let anyone tell you that your opinion, your voice, your say is useless. Your voice is the most powerful tool you have. Use it for change and never remain silent. Stay strong, and may you all find strength in your voices. Thank you.
All right, give it up for Tatiana one more time, y'all. All right, I forgot one group, but they're an amazing group. Please give a big shout out to Gays Against Guns up there with the sign. Doing a great job holding us down. All right, next we're going to introduce our next speaker. We have Jason Lindsay. Jason, are you here? Come on up, good sir. All right. Before we do that, though, I have one quick announcement. Sorry, guys. If you are in a Volvo with the license plate 13844E from Indiana, you may get towed. It's over there to the right. So if you're in a Volvo, it's a great car. My first car was a Volvo. But please go move your car so you don't get towed. With that said, we're going to turn it over to Jason Lindsay. Welcome, Jason.
Good morning. My name is Jason Lindsay, and I'm the founder and executive director of Pride Fund to End Gun Violence. I am also an Iraq war veteran who has served on the battlefield and seen what weapons of war do to people. We do not need weapons of war on our streets. I keep hearing the chant that guns don't kill people. But guess what? Guns kill children every single day where they're unsecured, where their parents don't lock them up. So when I hear a chant that guns don't kill people, that people kill people, well, I don't think a toddler should be held responsible when he kills himself from an unsecured firearm. By attending today, you are not only honoring those who's tragically lost their lives to gun violence, but also the many, many others that are impacted as a result of gun violence. We stand united in the call for action by our elected leaders and our legal system to address the gun violence epidemic. Pride Fund to End Gun Violence was born out of the tragedy of the Pulse nightclub shooting. It was just 3.5 years ago that the horror was unfolding. Lives were ended, the country wept, and the way we look at everything changed. Here in D.C. on Saturday, June 11, 2016, most of us here in D.C. were celebrating Gay Pride. We were filled with joy and pride for the love of our LGBTQ community. We woke up in the next morning to the devastating news about the tragedy at Pulse. In the early hours of June 12th, 49 individuals and 53 others were injured in what was the worst mass shooting in our country at the time. The fact that it occurred at a celebration during Pride Month made it all that much worse. For our community, gay bars are safe spaces where we can go and be ourselves and be at one with our community. Our safe space was violated, just like so many others. The shooting cast a dark cloud over the city of Orlando, our country, and even the world. Our spaces were violated and death touched everyone there. As I've traveled throughout Orlando, I have met so many families and so many people. Many people in the Orlando gay community, if you knew one victim, you knew many, because that's how tight-knit the community was. In the days following Pulse, I decided that there was enough was enough. I had not been involved in the gun reform movement until then, but I could no longer sit on my hands. As a gay man, I felt targeted, and I was angry, and I was ready to act. I knew as an Iraq war veteran, I could bring something to the table.
Thank you for your service, sir. Thank you for your
I knew the LGBTQ community needed our own unique organization to fight for gun reform, so I created Pride Fund. We fight for common sense gun laws. We support candidates who are willing to stand up for our rights. We have stood shoulder to shoulder with victims all over the country. The time to act on gun violence is now. Last year alone, more than 40,000 Americans lost their lives to gun violence, including murders, mass shootings, accidents, suicides, and children accidentally shooting themselves. When will we reach the tipping point? When will Congress act? When will our courts act? Today, our judicial branch has the opportunity to do the right thing and vote for the common sense gun safety. For too long, lawmakers and our court system has failed in their responsibility to keep us safe. It's our turn to make sure we are safe. For all of you that are on the ground doing the important work and are here today, keep fighting and let's take it up a notch. The last year and a half to 2 years has showed us what the power of the people can do. Look at the building behind you. and look at how many new members of Congress we have that ran on common sense gun safety and defeated NRA candidates. The days of the NRA's political power is over. Do not give up. Keep up the fight, and thank you for being here.
All right, give it up one more time for Jason Lindsay. What do we want? Oh, come on now. What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? And when do we want it? All right, everybody give a big round of applause for our next speaker. Real quick, we have Ruth Glenn coming up, a survivor of gun violence and a big advocate for domestic violence. Give it up for Ruth Glenn. Where's Ruth at? Ruth is amazing, by the way. Give her one more round of applause. I love this woman.
Good morning. What do we want? When do we want them? Now. What do we want? When do we want them? Now. Amen. Thank you. As Greg said, my name is Ruth Glenn. I'm the president of the National Coalition Against Domestic Violence. We have been fighting for survivors of domestic violence, and here lately, more so for survivors of domestic violence and gun violence. I am also a survivor of the deadly mix of gun violence and domestic violence. I was shot 3 times, left for dead, after many, many years of gun violence and harassment and fear. I did everything right, and I thought I was safe. But due to my partner's access to weapons and guns, he did that harm to me. On behalf of the 1 million women alive today who have been shot or shot at, I ask you, all of us, to disarm domestic violence. The intimate partner homicide rate has increased in recent years, driven by an increase in homicides committed by firearms and domestic abusers' access to firearms. I am not only a survivor because I am alive after the shooting, I am a survivor because I endured years and years of threats and fear. Because the man who needed to control me used the firearm to intimidate me, including kidnapping me at gunpoint, holding me hostage for 4 hours. Knowing that a trigger pull could kill me within minutes, I lived in constant fears. On behalf of the 4.5 million women alive today who have been directly threatened by an intimate partner with a gun, I ask you, I ask all of us, to disarm domestic violence. I am often asked regarding my own story and about victims in general. Those that call us and say, what do I do? I'm afraid. Wouldn't it have been better if you had your own firearm? The fear of using a weapon, in fact, which is reinforced by the abuser, of the gun being used on you, being turned on you, would have had their own firearm. The fear of using a weapon and the fact which is reinforced by the abuser of the gun being used on you, or the very idea that you would have a gun in the home in which violence is being perpetrated, in my mind, doesn't even make sense. Access means access to any gun. An abuser's access to firearm increases the risk of intimate partner homicide 5-fold, regardless of who owns the gun. On behalf of those who are at risk, I ask you, all of us, to disarm domestic violence. I am not alone, and I am lucky. I am here today to remind you of the women killed every month. On average, 52 women are shot and killed by an intimate partner per month. 52 women per month. When are we going to be mad about it? On behalf of those lost women, I ask you, all of us, all of you, disarm domestic violence. I ask you and I implore you to remember the impact of the intersection on domestic violence and its children, our families, our communities, hospitals, workplaces, and other institutions. Victims of domestic violence are often forgotten in these discussions and debates, especially those who have lost their lives as a result. On behalf of those who no longer have a voice, cannot be here today because they're dead, whose family and children are missing them, for those who have endured the threats of domestic violence with the presence of a gun, those who left even though they knew it could result in their death. Please disarm domestic violence. We do not want gun control. The mere word causes shivers. We want safety. Women and children are at risk. Entire communities are at risk. Check your histories of mass shooters. Gun laws save lives. Closing loopholes save lives. Please remember those most vulnerable and disarm domestic violence. Thank you.
Give it up one more time for Ruth, everybody. Enough is. Enough is. Enough is. Enough is. All right, we know this battle is going to have to happen at the national level, but also at the state level and the local level every day. Raise your hand if you're organizing at the local level to end gun violence. Give yourselves a round of applause. All right, our next speaker is the Executive Director of States United to Prevent Gun Violence and also a survivor. Please give it up for Clyde Lashar Summers.
Good morning. And thank you for showing up on this rainy day. I know that some people came through the snow to be here. I became a gun violence survivor on another snowy and freezing, snowy day in January of 1970. My stepfather shot me with a .30-06 hunting rifle at our home in rural New Hampshire. This type of gun is used to bring down big game. The bullet exploded into my back and it exited my 13-year-old body. It severed nerves close to my spine and caused damage to my kidney. Shrapnel still rises to the surface of my skin, pushing its way through muscle fiber. The simple addition of access to a gun and domestic violence forever changed my life in the course of seconds. While the bullet is no longer in my flesh, the trauma will never leave. Survivors fight traumatic memories. We know there is no safe place in America.
That's wrong.
That is why thousands of survivors are standing up to the NRA. We don't. This is enough. Enough. We don't want any of you to carry the burden we do. We walk next to all of you. You have shown up to tell the court that we matter. You have shown up to show the court that the NRA can no longer politicize and profit from our stories.
It's America.
For the past 2 years, I have worked in Vermont with a determined team of hunters, faith leaders, teachers, doctors, and farmers, with farmers all over the state, and we have stood up to the NRA. Vermont passed an expanded background check bill which limited high-capacity magazines, banned bump stocks, raised the age to purchase to 21. And at the same time, we passed an extreme risk protection order. We held our heads high as we watched a Republican governor sign them into law. Those laws are now at risk. Now I stand before you as the Executive Director of States United to Prevent Gun Violence. We know that we accomplish much at the state level. We know it matters. Every state and local group work hard to pass good violence prevention policy. The states have stood up and fought to hold back bad policy. We show up and we stand up. We are doing this work every day, even when we are bone tired. We know we cannot win this fight alone. We need each other. We are better together after we rise. We need to rise up against the NRA, whose agenda has landed us here this morning. The Supreme Court is jeopardizing our public health and our public safety if they choose to reinterpret the Second Amendment. No matter what Supreme Court justices or members of Congress or the State House say, we will continue to fight against the horrific public health crisis called gun violence. I am one person with many people, and I have to be brave with my life to show you that we can be brave together. We have to show up to be strong, and we have to show up to be effective allies with all of our communities, rural and urban. Thank you. Thank you, and onward.
All right, give it up for her one more time, y'all. Gun laws. Gun laws. Gun laws. Gun laws. And next, we want you to give it up for one of our great lawmakers and a big leader and advocate to end gun violence. Give it up for Representative Anthony Brown from Maryland.
Thank you. How's everybody doing today? Thank you. Thank you for being out here, for the organizers, the advocates, each and every one of you in communities throughout America, turning tragedy into triumph for more Americans. God bless each and every one of you, and thank you for being out here today. I have learned through my own experience that no family is immune from gun violence. No family is immune from the tragedy of domestic violence. My 40-year-old cousin Kathy, 10 years ago, was killed at the hands of her estranged boyfriend, shot with a gun in front of 2 Montgomery County police officers who in turn shot him. Gun violence knows no boundaries, regardless of race, religion, ethnicity. And that's why we need gun laws to
take that bullhorn, shove it.
There we go. Today's the NRA's latest efforts to wipe out gun safety laws, and the stakes couldn't be higher. The NRA wants the Supreme Court to rule that every person has a constitutional right to carry a concealed firearm, whether into a school, a shopping center, or a movie theater, and that's just wrong. In Maryland, like many other states, if you want to carry a concealed gun in public, you need to demonstrate that you are not a danger to yourself or others and successfully complete a firearms training course to show that you can correctly handle that gun. The NRA thinks that the right to bear arms shouldn't come with any responsibilities, but they are wrong, and wrong indeed. But the NRA doesn't want to stop there. It wants the court to abolish even the most common sense, life-saving, public safety protections, such as stopping domestic abusers from possessing firearms, red flag laws that help guns out of the hands of people who pose a threat to themselves and others, banning assault weapons and high-capacity magazines. 10 years ago, the Supreme Court reaffirmed that reasonable restrictions on gun possession are in fact constitutional. Yet, since then, we've witnessed the tragedies at Sandy Hook, Orlando, Las Vegas, and Parkland, and we realize that much more needs to be done. But the NRA has not abandoned its unrestricted view of the Second Amendment, which is inconsistent with American history and jurisprudence, out of touch with public safety, and out of step with the American people. That's why the NRA has tirelessly worked to stop any and every congressional action on gun safety for years, including fixing our broken background check system or keeping guns away from domestic abusers and stalkers, policies supported by 90% of the American public. And now, they want the court to halt the hard-fought, life-saving progress that the gun safety movement has made in dozens of states across the country in recent years. The American people are demanding action to address the public health epidemic of gun violence, and they're demanding action now. And they're handed the NRA defeat after defeat. The NRA is on the ropes, and now it needs the Supreme Court to bail it out. I urge the justices to listen to the American people.
Excuse me, he's speaking.
Safety regulations, God bless each and every one. Enough is enough!
Enough is enough! Enough is enough! Enough is enough! Enough is enough! Enough is enough! Enough is enough! Enough is enough! Enough is enough! Enough is enough! Enough!
All right, I love this. Gun law!
Save lives!
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 Looks like we got the bigger megaphone, doesn't it? All right, so while we're waiting for the mic to come back live, I'm gonna have my man Javier use the megaphone. He's a master at it, though. Let's give it up for Javier Lopez from the Red Hook Initiative.
Peace, everybody. What's going on? I bring you peace and blessings and greetings from the Red Hook Initiative in Red Hook, Brooklyn, Community Capacity Development, and 696 Queensbridge. All three of those organizations I work for and I serve to end gun violence in urban communities across New York City. The Supreme Court does not need to hear or review the New York State rifle case. Many in the legal community have already regarded this case as being moot. My state has already taken the necessary steps to repeal the rule at the heart of the case. So it's some bullshit right now that we're even talking about it. Any hearing, interpretation, and ruling on New York State rifle at this point would be political as fuck. As a representative for the thousands of African American, Latinx, and indigenous gun violence prevention credible messengers, leaders, and advocates who are working day and night to eradicate gun violence, we cannot allow the NRA to play politics with our courts without loudly stating how our neighborhoods, my community, will be negatively impacted by everything that's going on right behind me. In African American and Latinx neighborhoods that we serve, young people of color, their families, and the neighborhoods experience the impact of gun violence most acutely. To put it in perspective, the firearm-related homicide rate amongst African American male youths between the ages of 10 and 25 years old is nearly 20 times higher than the rate of white young males. Now sit on that. You see this man talking? He don't know nothing about our communities. He don't know a goddamn thing that happens in our communities. And he out here talking. He out here talking. What's he saying? He ain't saying a goddamn thing. Many have called violence a public health crisis, which is an accurate description of this epidemic. But perhaps a lesser known public health outcome as a result of the exposure of gun violence and its significance is the following risk factors that include asthma, hypertension, cancer, and stroke. When gun violence plays out, ain't nobody talking about all the outcomes. Nobody's talking about how the hospitals are filled with families who have been impacted severely, behavioral health and physical health. The trauma is severe. The NRA continues to promote weak gun laws which allow guns and illegal guns to proliferate in my neighborhoods, in my communities that I serve, leading to more and more shootings, homicides that perpetuate traumas that have impacted generations. We have generations of people living in public housing that have been impacted by gun violence. Ain't nobody talking about them. They're not even here. Who's here? I'm here as one representative. In addition, and rarely said in the gun violence debate, and the illegal gun law debate, and the gun safety debate, is the fact that these gun laws allow for the dominant response to gun violence in our communities to be over-aggressive policing, to be prosecution, to be sentencing, to growing out the prison industrial complex, which too often results in additional harm to these neighborhoods already plagued by gun violence. When they manipulate the gun safety laws, the police come in our communities and bash our heads in. Ain't nobody talking about that. Y'all not even talking about that. The NRA has done enough to harm our neighborhoods. I urge the Supreme Court to turn their attention to other pressing issues such as the continued segregation of public schools, the expanded police surveillance in black and brown neighborhoods, health care access, and much more. The NRA has done enough harm to our neighborhoods. And finally, allow me to give my condolences to the family of Clarence Venable. He was a man that was shot to death as he left the training session at the Alliance for Concerned Men, a not-for-profit based group in Washington that helps prevent gun violence. He is one of our nation's unknown heroes who deserves to be recognized as part of our nation's Credible Messages community, which is predominantly African American and Latinx-led. Thank you very much.
Hey, give it up one more time for Javier. All right, hey, if you have a Toyota Corolla with license plate
3AF6027, if the bumper sticker says I love parks, you might get towed. Toyota Corolla 3AF6027. It may get towed. Go ahead and move that thing. Okay. All right, guys, y'all feel a little rain? I don't feel no rain. I don't care if it was snow, we would be out here, wouldn't we? So all I gotta say to these guys here into the rain, enough is enough. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. All right, next we're gonna have Elijah Nichols come up, a senior fellow in the Giffords Courage Fellow Program, and start the Student Demands Action chapter at George Mason University. Give it up for Elijah, everybody.
Hiya. 627,200. That is the number of individuals that were shot in 2006. 30,896. That is the number of individuals that died due to gun violence in 2006. Out of the many bodies, many names, and many stories of that year, I only know one. I only know the story of the one that was a father with 2 young children, a husband to a loving wife, and the one that was an uncle, my uncle, Frank Simpson. You see, I remember my mom getting a call, her hands shaking, and her picking up the remote to turn on the TV. As the screen turned on and my mother turned to the local news channel, I remember our family photo flashing up onto the screen. The black turtlenecks that everyone wore, similar to the one that I am wearing today, to me has become a symbol of a communal sense of mourning. At 5 years old, my family and I became a part of a community of families that have had someone that they love killed by a gun. Let me make this clear. Frank Simpson, as well as the thousands that have been killed before and sadly after him, are the reason that I fight. And I hope you will fight for them too. Now I can tell you that being here today in front of the Supreme Court, you are fighting for Frank. You are fighting for him and the many like him by speaking truth to power against the NRA and their cronies. Inside those marble walls, what the supposed gun rights organization is pushing for is nothing more than a political game with our lives. It is an agenda of murder. There is absolutely no reason for this case to be at the Supreme Court today. I just need that to be known. Let me say that again. There's absolutely no...
There's no reason for this case to be at the Supreme Court today. I just need that to be known. The regulations that is being discussed inside the courtroom today have already been repealed. It's politics, plain and simple.
What the organization is doing inside there is putting politics and the profits of gun manufacturers over our lives. For Frank, I say not today. I say that the NRA will not win today because we will not stop fighting. We will elect pro-gun violence prevention candidates. We will take back the local, state, and federal legislators. We will make sure that those we vote in put judges on the bench that are for the people, not for the profits of a few. We will win this for Frank, for you, and for the safety of our future generations. My name is Elijah Nichols. I am proudly from Muskegon, Michigan. Now let's win this thing.
All right, give it up for Elijah, everybody. All right, real quick, I know a lot of us have lost someone or know someone who's been impacted by gun violence, just like Elijah spoke of Frank. So I want you to take a second, think about that name. And on the count of 3, I want you to yell that name as loud as you can to bring them into the space. You got it? All right, 1, 2, 3. One more time. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, guys. All right, before we bring up the next speaker, all my papers are wet. Look at this. This is going to be a mess. I need to get paid for this. Okay. All right. Before we bring up the next speaker, I want to make sure y'all still awake. So, enough. 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 All right, our next speaker is Ian Palmquist. Ian, are you here? Give it up. Be real loud for Ian, everybody.
Morning, everybody. My name is Ian Palmquist, and I'm the Senior Director of Programs at Equality Federation. We're the national partner to statewide organizations who are winning equality for lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer people in the communities we call home. And we are proud today to stand with Every Action and all of the organizations here today to call on the Supreme Court to reject the NRA's attempt to deprive us of the right to enact measures to protect ourselves from gun violence. The LGBTQ community knows gun violence too well. We know gun violence in the massacre at Pulse in Orlando, where 49 lives were lost, bringing violence and death to a place where people went to feel safe. We know gun violence in the epidemic of murders of trans women of color. We know gun violence in the rising number of hate crimes against LGBTQ people. We know gun violence in the loss of folks in our community to suicide at rates far beyond the national average. And we know gun violence in our schools, where sexual and gender minority students are more likely to be threatened with a firearm. And we know we need sensible regulations to protect our communities from violence. Today, we need the Supreme Court to stand up to the NRA. The NRA wants to use this case to challenge and roll back hundreds of gun safety laws across our country. Every gun law is at risk, even measures that are overwhelmingly supported by the American people. For the LGBTQ community, for all our communities, the justices must not endanger public safety. They must not adopt a radical new interpretation of the Second Amendment. It is wrong, it is inconsistent with our Constitution, it is dangerous, and it would mean even more guns in our public spaces and the spaces we all deserve to feel safe. Thank you so much.
Gun laws. Gun laws. Gun laws. Gun laws. All right, next we're going to bring up Randy Weingarten, the president of the American Federation of Teachers. Give it up for Randy.
So, it's very sad when the NRA, who has pushed this case today, needs to have someone with a megaphone. Wait, in this community. Wait. It is very sad that that the NRA needs to actually try and disrupt this community of people who love other people. They have a right to speak, just like they have. No, don't worry about it. Remember, I'm a school teacher. I'm used to disruptive children. They have a right to speak, but so do we. And at a moment of time like this, when you have, and I have seen, my local is the local in Newtown. My local is the local in Parkland. We've had speakers here before who have talked about their families being killed by gun violence. We have a law in New York that has been there, and as a result, there has been no gun violence in schools in New York. And the NRA wants to get rid of that law. This is a moment. This is, again, I'm used to disruptive students. This is a moment where we as a community come together to say it's time to act. When a nation loses more students to gun violence in a year than service members in combat, it's time to act. When young people say, you notice say he needs to disrupt these facts. When young people say their greatest fear is gun violence, is it time to act? When students and teachers across the country speak about school shootings in terms of when, not if, is it time to act? When our children are demanding action, is it time to act? Well, you, my friends, you are acting by sitting here, by standing here in the rain. You are acting. You are being out here making sure that the Supreme Court, that others actually understand that we need sensible gun violence laws like the law in New York City and New York State. We need to act across the country. So, are you ready to act? Are you ready to act in the November elections? Are you ready to stand here and be heard? Thank you.
All right, everybody, give it up for Randy one more time. What do we want? When do we want them? What do we want? When do we want them? I can hear you all the way in the back. Great job. I see you right there. Nice job. All right, next we're going to hear from Bob Mokos, who lost his sister to gun violence, a former Air Force pilot from Minnesota and co-lead of the Minnesota Gun Owners for Safety. Please give it up for Bob, everybody.
Wake up, man. Can't see around my eyes. Thank you. Good morning, my fellow citizens and supporters of democracy. I stand before you as a survivor of gun violence, a gun owner, and a veteran of our armed forces. I know too well the pain of losing a loved one to gun violence when in 1986, my sister Diane was murdered as she exited her car to enter a church. 100 people a day die at the hand of a gun in this country. 100 people a day, with hundreds more injured. Those 100 a day equal just about 4 Sandy Hooks every single day in this country. And when my sister was murdered, that was our family's personal Sandy Hook. As a gun owner and a former participant in NRA-sponsored events, I emphatically can proclaim that the NRA does not speak for me nor represent my views. In fact, the NRA no longer represents the majority of our citizens who have come together to call for common sense gun legislation. The gun manufacturing lobby is now trying to convince the Supreme Court to prop up their losing agenda. The court should say no to the gun lobby and interpret the Second Amendment as the Founding Fathers intended. A well-regulated militia does not mean an unregulated armed populace wreaking havoc upon our peace and tranquility. It is time for the NRA and the court to listen to Antonin Scalia when in Heller versus D.C., Justice Scalia said that these rights in the Second Amendment do not come without regulation. Our government is obligated, per the Constitution, to ensure domestic tranquility, provide for the common defense, promote the general welfare, and secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. This can only happen by protecting our gun laws so that we can all feel safe in our schools, churches, nightclubs, shopping malls, parks, and so forth. As an Air Force officer, I took an oath to protect and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. The NRA used to be a gun safety and a sportsman organization. It is now a lobbying arm for the gun manufacturing industry. And it works counter to every single one of the founding principles I quoted. I, for one, am weary of our children's lives being the cost we pay for the Second Amendment. I call upon the Supreme Court to not give in to the NRA's agenda, but instead to rein in its influence and return this country on a path to peace, tranquility, and life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Thank you.
Give it up one more time for Bob, everybody. All right, next coming to the stage, we have Lourdes Russell, a junior attending Stone Ridge School at the Sacred Heart in Bethesda, the same private school where multiple Supreme Court justices send their children. She has led gun violence activism within her school, coordinated walkouts, organizing town halls, and sharing her story for March for Our Lives. Please give it up for her one more time. Come on, y'all, one more time for Lourdes.
Sorry, I'm a bit short. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Lourdes, and I'm one of the 9 student voices in the amicus brief presented by March for Our Lives to the Justices of the Supreme Court. I have not had the same experience as some of the other people that have been up here. I have never been directly affected by gun violence, but I speak for everyone my age and younger whose innocence has been forever stained by this growing epidemic, by the increase in active shooter drills, the necessity of various escape plans, and the conversations of death that we must now have with small children. We are the first generation to be affected by such a large magnitude, the mass shooting generation. I'm a junior at Stone Ridge School of the Sacred Heart, a place where, like in many other elite private schools, we students used to think we were untouchable. We used to think that by some privilege, our tuition and our uniforms protected us from the atrocities happening in this country. I can remember moments where I didn't let my anxiety take over because I thought being a suburban, private school attending girl would protect me. But that's not the case anymore. For a long time, I thought I could focus on my love for language learning and math instead of being shot at school. Through the failures of politicians, my classmates and I have been shaken out of that luxury. I watched as children in Sandy Hook and Parkland were let out of their schools with their hands above their heads, their friends dead behind them. And just last year, when there was an active shooter threat at a high school just next door to my school, I realized that no privilege I had could save me. I texted my parents updates that day, assuring them that I was going to be fine, that I wasn't going to be shot, because our school administrators told me I was going to be fine. We went into lockdown, and I sat in my world history class doing whatever I could to distract myself from the prospect of dying where I sat. Although it was eventually declared a false alarm, and there never ended up being an active shooter next door, I became on edge after that afternoon. I said in our amicus brief that the question of feeling safe at school was complex. But after further reflection, I realized that that's not true. I don't feel safe anywhere. I never went through the real thing, and I don't feel safe at all. And I thought to myself, if I feel this way, and I go to an elite independent school that some of these justices send their students to, how do people that don't have my privilege, how are they supposed to feel in their communities when they're threatened? That question made me want to face the hypocrisy of the people in power in this country, to challenge our existing laws through our democracy. The people in power can say that we're the future, but we can't be the future if we're shot dead at school. The people in power can say they understand our experiences, but they go places with heavy security details and send their kids to the safest, most elite schools that money can buy. That hypocrisy is why I became involved in this work. I channel my anxiety and sadness and anger into our democracy. I help organize town halls and walkouts to the Capitol, and working for that through my school administration has not been simple. But as much as my school has pushed back against us, and as much as politicians have pushed back against us, and as much as unelected officials have pushed back against us, our movement has not given up. But today, the Supreme Court is hearing a case that can invalidate all of that work. The Supreme Court justices could deprive us of the chance to end our fear through the democratic process. Thoughts and prayers can't fix this. Right? They can't fix it. The government needs to let us, people like you and me, have the chance to fix this through real laws and legislation and policy. Nowhere is safe, regardless of the precautions we take or the privileges we have. The decision of this case paves the way for how our government will grapple with gun control and legislation for the decades to come. And in case you didn't know, it's not the video games, it's not the lack of preparation, and it's not your zip code. It's the guns, and we deserve and how the hell they're regulated. The Supreme Court can't take that away from us. Thank you.
Great job. All right, next to the stage. Before we do that, though, let's hear it for our haters one time. Enough? Enough? That's awesome. All right, thank you, guys. We're going to hear from Marco Vargas, a first-generation college student. We know it's important that our kids are safe in school and at home, and that's why he started Students Demand Action at his school and a Demand Action chapter in his own community of South Central Los Angeles. So please give it up for Marco.
Thank you, thank you. Hello, my name is Marco Vargas, and I am a first-generation college student attending Dartmouth College. And I'm a student with Students Demand Action. For the last 2 years, my friends and I have immersed ourselves in a fight against gun violence because we know that it disproportionately impacts communities of color. When I was 5 years old, gun violence devastated my family before I could even learn how to ride a bike. I witnessed my father striking my mother, screaming and getting drunk after school. Elementary school teachers would ask me, why I didn't complete my homework, and I would silently respond because I didn't have time. But I should have explained how no one in my house spoke English, how my mom was struggling to figure out a way to escape the bruises, nosebleeds, and black eyes that inflicted her body every time my father parked his white pickup truck and closed the door behind him. For years, my mother was forced to clean, cook, and grocery shop because my father was affiliated. He walked up and down our street, concealing a pistol he purchased on the black market because with 10 bullets in the chamber, he was always in control.
You should have been in jail, sir.
A gun was what my father used to silence my entire family for years. He never fired a bullet at us, but the psychological scars that pierced my family still hurt. They hurt when my friends ask me about my father. They hurt when I hear similar stories from friends in South Central. And they hurt when I turn on the news and see guns senselessly being used to inflict pain and suffering that I know from experience will not go away anytime soon. It's been 15 years since police took my father's gun away and approved a restraining order. I fight against gun violence because stories like mine are too common. I fear that gun violence in the United States has become normalized. Today is a reminder of why we must tell our stories. Today in this building, the NRA is pushing for an extreme interpretation of the Second Amendment, and we are here because we know what's at stake. Every day in communities across the nation, black and brown students hear gunshots at night. I was raised listening to the uproar of police sirens at night, helicopters circling the block, white lights beaming down, and dogs barking uncontrollably. This does not have to be the reality of future generations. When I look at all of us gathered here today, I am reminded how many of us agree. I'm reminded how many of us have been affected by gun violence. And I'm reminded how hard we'll continue to fight to make our country safer. Thank you very much.
All right, give it up for Marco, everybody. Please welcome Robin Thomas to the stage next, everybody. Big round of applause.
Okay. Thank you so much for being here with us today on this cold December morning. Throughout history, change has been made by the people who showed up and spoke out. Your presence here today serves as a reminder to this court and to our elected officials that the many, many Americans demanding an end to gun violence aren't going anywhere. We're here today because we are here today because we are angry. We're angry because there are 100 Americans a day who die from gun violence. 100 yesterday and 100 tomorrow, and we are sick and tired of it. We're here today because survivors, many of you in this crowd, survivors like Gabby Giffords, whose life is a model of public service and courage, and who will fight with us every day in the face of the unimaginable heartache that comes with the crisis of gun violence in America. We're here today because we want our politicians to take action to end this epidemic, not waste our time listening to cases that aren't even on the books anymore. A case brought by gun lobby plaintiffs orchestrated to advance the interests of the people who make guns and buy guns and who care more about guns than the lives of our children. The right not to get shot, the right to live a life free from gun violence is far more important than the narrow law that we hear before this court today. But no matter what this court decides, no matter how this turns out, we are not going anywhere. Our focus as a country needs to be on what will make our children, our families, and our communities safer. That is what we're fighting for, and that is what we're going to keep fighting for, not for an industry that makes profits selling more guns. The Giffords Law Center and Gabby Giffords have been at the forefront of this fight for a long time, and we're not backing down. When I look out at this crowd today in this rainy, cold morning, I know that we are stronger than we've ever been. We are winning and making progress, and that's going to continue. Thank you for being here, and don't give up.
All right, give it up for Robin, y'all. Okay, I realize we haven't all met each other, so everybody put your hands in the air. Shake your hands. Okay, we've all shook hands. Now you know everybody in the room. Thank you so much. So we're going to take a quick musical intermission, and then we'll get back to the program. So give it up for our band, everyone. And while they're setting up, what do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? What do we want? When do we want it? All right, thank you guys. Give them a round of applause one more time. She told me to keep going. So, enough is, enough is, enough is, enough is, enough is, enough is. All right, we're gonna play a game real quick. If you're on the left side, I want you to say end. If you're in the middle, I want you to say gun. And if you're on my right, say violence. Y'all got it?
Check, check.
All right, here we go. That was beautiful, y'all. Give yourselves a round of applause. All right, give it up for the band.
We're not safe anymore. They're walking their guns through the synagogue door. No, we aren't safe anywhere when they're cutting down the faithful in their houses of prayer. Mother Emanuel in Charleston, a Sikh temple in Oak Creek. How much blood needs to be spilled? Oh, spare me your thoughts and prayers, speech. We're not safe anymore. They're gunning us down in our grocery stores. No, we aren't safe anywhere when they're murdering our babies in their classroom chairs. Too many schools to rattle off, too many names to memorize. How much blood needs to be spilled? Oh, spare me your don't politicize. We're not safe anymore when neighbors are shooting neighbors just for knocking on their door. No, we aren't safe anywhere when too many lose their lives to stray bullets in the air. How many stories do you need? How many records should we break? How much blood needs to be spilled? Oh, spare me your mental health debate. I don't want a good guy with a gun. I don't need a good guy with a gun. If all the bad guys had were bats, then the good guys would need one. We are not safe anymore. They're walking their guns through the synagogue doors.
Chris Matthews.
The men and the women behind us are keeping you safe. You are not in a gun-free zone. You do understand that, don't you?
Shonda Moss. I am a survivor, and first and foremost, I am the mother of Sean Moss. I am Sean Moss's mother. On August 26, 2014, my total thinking changed. Why? Because someone decided to take my son's life without permission. 17 times he shot my son. Sean's son turned 17 this year. And I can imagine at least one of those 17 thoughts was, why did he take my father? Where will I find another hero? How can I go on without him? But he will go on, because I am the voice of Sean Moss, and I will fight until I win. What I need for you to understand, NRA, is this. I don't want your rights. I don't want your guns. I don't even want you around. I want for you to be responsible for the choice that you have made. And if you're not responsible, you will understand that there are consequences for your action. We're here on this cold morning because we believe in what we're doing. Because we don't want another family to go through what I went through. Where I live in Lynchburg, Virginia, we started a chapter. And just in case you didn't know, we flipped some seats. After legislation refused to take action, we made more phone calls. We knocked on more doors. And we showed up then, just like we'll keep on showing up. We will not be silent because you think we should be, but because we don't want another family going through what many families have gone through. And why this morning in that building is the NRA trying to take us back? But I'm here to say we're going forward. We're not going backwards, because we are going to fight until we win. We're going to fight until we win. Come on, let's fight! At this time, it is my honor to introduce Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut.
That is a hard act to follow. Hey, this is what a movement looks like, right? Now, I am not dressed for the rain, but I am dressed for a movement, right? And listen, what I know is that they are going to increasingly be here because they can't beat us out there. They're going to try to get the courts to protect them because the voters won't protect them any longer. Because we, for the first time in a long time, we, the anti-gun violence movement, are finally stronger than the gun lobby is. That's why we're flipping seats all over the country. Right? That's why we have these guys running for the hills, retiring in droves. And we aren't going to stop, because here's what I know. I know as a student of history that the great social change movements are not the ones that gave up when they hit an obstacle, right? Are not the ones that went home when they hit a bump in the road. The great social change movements, the ones that you read about in the history books, those are the ones that knew about the righteousness of their cause, that knew that the status quo would eventually fall, and stopped at nothing until they saved lives and changed history. That's what great social change movements are about, and that's what we are. And so this radical agenda to try to take away our ability to protect our kids, right? And I dropped off my kids this morning at public elementary schools that do active shooter drills, readying for what kids believe today is the inevitability that they are going to get shot at. They want to take our right away to make change, to pass laws that actually make our streets safer, that prevent the kind of episodic gun violence that plagues American cities. They want to take that right away, and we are not going to let them do that. So I am dressed today to fight on the inside of these buildings because I know that you guys are dressed and ready to fight on the outside of these buildings. And so it just warms my heart to see big crowd after big crowd, to see rally after rally, to see headquarters after headquarters filled with volunteers, because the stronger you are outside, the stronger you make us inside. Thank you, everybody.
Every army needs a general. And in the red shirt army, we got the best general we can have. I introduce to you now, Shannon Watts.
I'm short. Hello, everyone. Woo! I am here today because I am angry. Across the country, our volunteers have stood shoulder to shoulder with all of you here today, and we have passed more than 300 gun safety laws in just 3 years. We have made progress because Americans demand it, and we are fed up with the gun lobby writing our nation's gun laws. We are fed up with children hiding under desks while lawmakers hide behind the gun lobby. We are fed up with lax gun laws that make our neighborhoods, homes, and communities less safe. We have fought back again and again, and we have won. The NRA is trying to erase this progress that we've made in one fell swoop. Are we going to let them get away with that? Hell no! Hell no! The NRA is coming to the courts because they know they're losing in state houses, and in boardrooms, and in the House of Representatives, and in the court of public opinion. They are racked by political and financial scandals. They are being exposed for what they have always been, a front for gun lobbyists who exist only to protect profits at the expense of American lives. The only place the NRA has left to fight is in the Supreme Court, and they won't win there either. The NRA is scared. We are 6 million strong, and the writing is on the wall. The NRA is weaker than they have ever been, and we are stronger than we have ever been. And you want to know why? Because we have shown lawmakers that when they do the right thing, we will have their backs. When they do the wrong thing, we will have their jobs. The bottom line is this. The Supreme Court should not allow the NRA to take a court case that is moot and use it to further its deadly agenda. Good gun laws save lives. So today, we're going to be loud enough that the justices inside know that we're watching everything they do. Too many families live in fear of gun violence, and we do not have to live like this, and our children sure as hell do not die like this. We are proving every day that winning is possible. We outspent the NRA in the 2018 midterm elections, and we beat them in Virginia in both General Assembly. We beat the NRA in their own backyard. We show every day that winning is possible, and together, we're going to keep winning in the courts too. Thank you.
Based on people who review the law, based on
Kelly is a 19-year-old and lives in Washington, D.C. Since losing his twin brother to gun violence in 2018, Zion has turned his pain into activism, fighting for safe streets, legislation in his brother's name, sharing his story for March of Our Lives, and in a brief for this case, shining a light on the crisis of everyday gun violence through advocacy and outreach. I introduce to you Zion Kelly.
Thank you, sir. Please talk about people violence.
Greetings, I am Zion Kelly, a native Washingtonian and a second-year student at Florida A&M University. Thank you. And today will go down in history because the Supreme Court, they will decide to hear our voices and hear our pain. And today, they will decide whether they want to hear our voices or to put more lives at risk. For far too long, the topic of gun safety has been swept under the rug. And for far too long, gun violence has plagued our communities, our schools, our churches, and our neighborhood stores. But finally, we as a country are coming together to address it. All across America, we are coming together to demand common sense gun legislations and to elect officials who stand for us and save our lives. But with this case, the Supreme Court could single-handedly rip that away from us. Even more than democracy, human lives are at stake with this case. Gun violence is very prevalent in our society, and it impacts more people than we can possibly imagine. Last year alone, 36,383 Americans were killed last year with guns. People who do not deserve to lose their lives, and people who do not deserve to be shot. But we have to look deeper than numbers. We have to look deeper than statistics. These are real people with real lives. People whose family members are grieving every day. And I personally know the impact of losing a close loved one. Gun violence in Washington, D.C. has impacted my family for generations. It seemed like it's a never-ending cycle. My grandfather lost his son to gun violence. My dad lost one of his brothers to gun violence in Washington, D.C. And in 2017, I lost my twin brother to a bullet. And that's why this is so personal to me, because my family has been grieving for decades. And the grieving process is something that many people cannot understand unless they actually go through it.
Well,
there's a lot of trauma that comes from it. And for a long time, I felt uncomfortable with leaving my house. It was hard for my family to adjust to our new life. And I did not go to school for weeks. And I did not want to leave my house because the process was too hard. But my twin brother, Zaire, he was only 16 when he was shot coming from a college preparatory program, college bound. He was miles from the Supreme Court and only steps from my house. And Zaire was an active community member. He spoke out about issues that impact youth across the city. He had the whole world ahead of him, and he was an exceptional student and person. I had to find ways to cope and adjust. And speaking out for my community is one way for me to keep my brother's legacy alive. It is a way for me to beat the odds and be a positive role model for my peers and siblings. Zaire had the right not to be shot. My grandfather's son had the right not to be shot. And my father's brother had the right not to be shot, just like 36,000 Americans last year. And we must end this fight against gun violence for future generations. It is time that we make a change. It is time that we gave our communities hope. This is why we have to continue to fight, and fight for the people who cannot be here. We have to fight for the communities who have been marginalized for years, and we have to fight for the students who live every day in fear that they will not make it home. Our voices matters, and if the Supreme Court cares about my life and your lives and the lives of everyone in this country, then they must hear our voices. Again, I am Zion Kelly. Thank you.
all lives matter. All lives matter. At this time, I would like to introduce Chris Brown, President of Brady.
Let's have a public
Thank you so much, Brenda, and thank you, Zion, for your words. I am so very sorry for your loss. We lose almost 40,000 Americans a year to gun violence, and make no mistake, this is a uniquely American problem, and we are going to fix it. I am Chris Brown, and I am very proud to serve as the president of Brady. Brady was founded by Jim Brady, Jim and Sarah Brady. Jim Brady, of course, served as President Ronald Reagan's press secretary. He was carrying out his job in front of the Hilton when he was shot. Like so many Americans devastated by gun violence, he decided to move forward and enact the Brady Law. That law has now stopped the sale of more than 3.5 million guns to individuals who never should have them. At Brady, we work here in D.C. with Congress and across the courts and in communities to ensure that nobody has to suffer the kind of violence that far too many Americans are suffering today. And as you've heard today, this case is an NRA-fueled threat to all of the progress we have made. Let's be clear. This is a lawsuit designed to force a reinterpretation of the Second Amendment, to reverse long-standing common sense gun laws. We can't let that happen. We know that every amendment in the Bill of Rights has certain limitations on it. The freedom of speech, the First Amendment, what can't you do? You can't yell fire in a crowded theater. The Second Amendment is no different. When the Second Amendment was adopted, many states had rules that even required the review of how guns were stored in people's homes. The Second Amendment didn't change that, and that's exactly the laws that we have been able to enact all over the states across this country. Extreme risk laws now adopted in 17 states and the District of Columbia. And you should give yourselves a hand because you all made that happen. You know, I had a lot more to say here, and I think I just want to conclude with the following. We are a movement, and we are not going to stop. We are all here because we know one thing that's very simple. Gun laws save lives. We are all here because we demand gun laws that save lives. And we won't quit. We won't quit. America won't quit. Veterans won't quit. Our moms, our dads, our parents, our grandparents will not quit. Our common sense legislators we elected, they won't quit. All across this country, this great country, we won't quit because none of you will quit. So let's say it together. Gun laws. Gun laws. Gun laws. Thank you all for being in this fight with us.
How big is the check that you get from Mr. Bloomberg? We're here for volunteers. Enough! We outnumber you! Enough is enough! 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 Enough is enough!
honor to introduce Representative Conley.
Thank you. My fellow Americans, we have a right to protect ourselves and our communities. And the Supreme Court needs to hear from us. I represent Northern Virginia. And when we had the Virginia Tech tragedy so many tragedies ago, at that time that was the worst gun massacre in American history. I was chairman of Fairfax County, and we buried 6 young people that week in my county, including the shooter. And we thought that was the worst tragedy that was ever going to befall us. Sadly, so many names we can barely remember them since. Newtown, Parkland, young children being massacred in schools.
What about the massacres on our roads from Texas? Drunk driving?
You see how some people are afraid of our message. But there is good news. We had elections in Virginia last month. And with new majorities, we're going to pass gun control in the Commonwealth of Virginia. We're going to protect our communities. We're going to say no to the NRA. Now, I don't know about you. After tragedies like Newtown, NRA's answer was, let's arm teachers. All I could think of was my algebra teacher. I thought I would never give him a gun. Teachers are in the profession of teaching our children. They're not in the profession of law enforcement. It is an unbelievable streak of madness coming out of the NRA. And by the way, I am the NRA congressman. They are headquartered in my district, and they give me an F every year. And I can tell you that's the proudest F I've ever earned. I've come up with 3 simple things for fellow Americans to think about with respect to guns. A, B, C. A ban on assault weapons. Nobody needs an AR-15 to protect their home. It only exists for one reason, to kill people. We must ban assault weapons in America. Universal background checks, B. Overwhelmingly Americans favor it, and the NRA used to. Nobody should be able to purchase a weapon without having a background check. We could have prevented a lot of tragedies if we'd done that. And finally, close the gun show loophole. In my state of Virginia, you can go to a gun show and buy anything you want without any ID. And that's why we're the #1 state in the East Coast in terms of gun trafficking. We have to close that gun show loophole. So let's say it together. A, B, C. And that's a good start. I promise you, when I ran for office, I looked in the mirror and I said, there got to be some things that are worth losing your office for. And that was a while ago when gun control was not so popular. But I made it one of my chief pledges that I would always support gun control to protect our communities. And now we have numbers. We have the moms who demand action. We have the Brady Group. We have every town. And we are changing this debate. And Virginia has shown you it's a winning debate. And none of us are going to rest until we keep our communities safe and we have reasonable gun control in the United States of America. So it's a rainy day. So thank you for coming out. But this fight will continue until we prevail. And our children, once again, live in a safe country. Thank you so much for being here today. God bless you all. Keep up the fight.
Oftentimes when you're in a crowd, you hear a lot of unnecessary noise. But that only means that the true noise is worth listening to. So when you talk about us being paid, I would never want to be paid for my son getting shot. That's not why I'm here. So just in case you didn't know, the first word in Moms Demand Action is volunteer. Just in case you didn't know. And just in case you didn't know, every time I speak for all people, not just Sean. Because see, we only speak up when it don't happen to you. You don't have nothing to say. But once it happens to you, understand this, I'll still be here speaking for you. At this time, we'll have our musical tribute.
This one's yours. The stand. I just mean the stand. Yeah. There you go. Thanks. My name's Chris Matthews. This song is called Signs of the Times. Thurston was not the first one, not the last. Columbine, Virginia Tech, and Newtown came to pass. Then Umpqua and Marshall County High. But Marjorie Stoneman Douglas said enough, we shouldn't have to die. Kids are marching, marching, marching for their lives, while Congress gets their coffers filled and all their pockets lined. The kids act like grown-ups, while the grown-ups act like children. Oh, I can feel that change a-coming as they cry never again. So I'll keep singing, I'll keep marching, I'll keep trying, until the day that there are fewer of us dying. I will not hold my tongue or all the thoughts inside my head. I think I'll keep on holding up these protest signs instead. Stefan was not the first one. He won't be the last. Walter Scott and Oscar Grant were killed long before that. Philando and Sweet Rakia too. It's for them that others take a knee. It is not to disrespect our troops. And so they're marching, marching, marching for black lives, 'cause they still don't seem to matter, be you adult or a child. It's not anti-police, it's anti-police brutality. I can feel that change a-coming as they cry, no justice, no peace. So I'll keep singing, I'll keep marching, I'll keep trying, until the day that there are fewer of us dying. I will not hold my tongue or all the thoughts inside my head. I think I'll keep on holding up these protest signs instead. immigrants and dreamers marching hand in hand with teachers. Women in pink hats taking the government to task. Oh, these are the signs of the times we're living in. Resist, persist, and in the end, love always wins. Love always wins. So let's keep singing, let's keep marching, let's keep trying until the day that there are fewer of us dying. Do not hold your tongue or all the thoughts inside your head. Keep lifting other people up. Keep marching, lift your voices up. Don't give up, just keep holding up those protest signs instead. Instead.
Enough is enough! Enough is enough! Enough is enough!
I hope you will sing this with us at the end. Thank you.
Go ahead and walk in my boots for a minute. Tell me how easy it is to stay silent. Walking home to your babies and you see those flashing lights. Mom always said it's not safe for a black man to walk at night. Go ahead and walk in my shoes for a minute. And tell me how easy it is just to forget it. Cause they say it's your fault for dressing like you do. But ignore that good man who left you black and blue. Oh, till the end of the hurt, until the last lesson learned. I'll wreck my voice, I'll be heard through the noise. I will stand my ground until I see the end. And you would too if you'd been where I'd been. Isn't that right? Go ahead and walk in my shoes for a minute. And tell me how easy it is to grin and bear it when the ones you love the most close the door on you and shun. Cause a 4,000-year-old book is more important than their son. Go ahead and walk with my bare feet for a minute. Tell me how easy it is to accept it when everything you've ever known is turned to soot and ash. A war you had no hand in took everything you had. How does it feel when the world turns it, or government turns it back? Oh, till the end of the hurt, until the last lesson learned. I'll wreck my voice, I'll be heard through the noise. I will stand my ground until I see the end. And you would too if you'd been where I'd been. Oh, so this is how change works, right? It starts with one person standing around a water cooler talking about how Black lives matter, talking about how trans lives matter, talking about how our lives matter, talking about how students' lives matter, students' lives matter. Yeah, that's why we're fighting, sir. And you tell that person who looks like you, you tell somebody who looks like you, loves like you do, that this is what I believe, this is what I believe. And you know what that person does when they go to church on Sunday? They go to church on Sunday and they tell Becky in the church pew next to her. They tell Becky, this is what I believe. And because you were brave, Becky knew the words to say. Becky knew the words to say, and that's why we fight. So I want you to sing this with me. I want you to sing these lyrics with me. You ready? It goes like this. Stand up, won't you stand up, won't you stand up, won't you stand up? DC, go! Stand up, won't you stand up, won't you stand up, won't you stand up? Keep going, keep going, keep going. Till the end of the hurt, till the last lesson learned. I'll wreck my voice, I'll be heard through the noise. I will stand my ground until I see the end. be louder than them, DC. Stand up, won't you? Stand up, won't you? Stand up, won't you? Stand up, won't you? Keep fighting the good fight.
I will. Oh, you ought to stop that noise. You're full of shit. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. Enough is enough.
Isn't it a beautiful morning for common sense gun laws? I am so happy to be here with all of you warriors this morning. Thank you for everything that you do to make all of our communities safer. My name is Chelsea Parsons. I run the gun violence prevention program at the Center for American Progress. And when I was in law school, I read hundreds of cases that came out of this building, and we had the most fascinating academic debates about legal doctrine. And starting in a year or so, law students are going to start reading the opinion that comes out of this case. And they are going to have fascinating academic debates about mootness. But what we know is that so much more is at stake in this case than what those law students are going to debate. This case is about our ability to elect legislators who will enact laws that will save lives. This case is about our ability to send our children to school, to the park, to the store, or anywhere else they damn well want to go without being afraid that they will not come home. And this case is about us finally taking steps to end this horrific American experiment of weak gun laws and prolific gun ownership, because you know what? It is not working. So thank you for being here today to make sure that those 9 justices and these few folks here and the media and everyone who is watching understands what is at stake and that we are not going anywhere. Now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, who is from the National Center for Transgender Equality, Rodrigo Hang-Leitinen.
We believe in equality. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. My name is Rodrigo Hang-Leitinen, and I'm with the National Center for Transgender Equality. Thank you. You may be wondering why transgender people care about this Supreme Court case today. And yes, thank you, because of Ashanti Carmen. We care because gun violence is an epidemic that is killing our community. So far this year, at least 22 transgender women have been murdered, and they are mostly Black transgender women. That is a murder every 16 days. Every 16 days, another person is gunned down, and a whole community shakes in fear, wondering who is the next to go. The toxic combination of transphobia and outdated gun laws make it all too easy for someone with hatred in their heart to take our lives away. Here are just 3 of the Black transgender women murdered this year. Ashanti Carmen. shot very close to here in Fairmont Heights, Maryland on March 30th. She was found dead of gunshot wounds around 6:30 in the morning after having a night out with friends. She had recently been named Employee of the Month at the Dunkin' Donuts in Alexandria where she worked. Her fiancé, Philip Williams, told press that he couldn't imagine why someone would want to hurt her. She was 27 years old. Malaysia Booker, shot to death in Dallas, Texas on May 18th. She had already survived an earlier attack. A month earlier, she was brutally beaten in an apartment complex in the parking lot, and she bravely spoke out, noting that most transgender victims don't survive to advocate for themselves in their community. Then a month later, police responded to reports of gunshots. When they arrived on the scene, they found Malaysia face down, dead of gunshot wounds. She was 23 years old. And lastly, Kiki Fantroy, shot to death in Miami, Florida, my hometown, on July 31st. She was coming home from a party with friends when a young man propositioned her for sex. She refused. He chased her down, firing shots at her and her friends. She was taken to a local hospital where she died, leaving her family to mourn. She was 21 years old. Without basic gun safety protections, the most vulnerable amongst us are at risk of death just for being our authentic selves. Those who don't think we matter are emboldened to attack us. They are given the means to take away our lives in just one shot. This must end. It is time for common sense gun violence measures so that we can protect our own lives. Thank you for taking action today. Together, we will protect each other and end this. Thank you. Thank you.
Our next speaker is a survivor of one of the first school shootings where many of us said never again. Please welcome Sally Garrigan, a member of the Everytown Survivor Network and a survivor of the Columbine shooting.
Good morning. I'm Sally Garrigan. I currently live in Virginia by way of Colorado and New York City. Ever since my teenage years, theater has always given me an escape, a well-needed outlet, and a place to tell really incredible stories. One story that I never hid from, but I didn't proactively talk about, was that on April 20th, 1999, I was a student at Columbine High School. Like most events that change your life, my day began in the most unremarkable way. I was in my choir class. As we were about to open up our music, we heard a loud bang. And pandemonium broke as two heavily armed students came into our school, shooting anyone in their path. I ran and managed to make it through the auditorium as the sound of ricocheting bullets reached my ears from the lower commons area of the school. As I reached the front doors of the school, glass shattered and rained down in front of me. I quickly hid behind a column just as a teacher waved me toward another route to safety. While this story is heartbreaking, sadly, it's not unique. A ripple of pain, trauma, and survivor's guilt occurs following every instance of gun violence. After each new tragedy, I have to admit, I was left feeling hopeless. What did I have to add to the conversation? What could I do to help? I found my voice in this movement after the Parkland shooting that felt eerily similar to my own story. I joined Moms Demand Action and the Everytown Survivor Network community, and I learned that every day in this country, people's lives are being shattered by gun violence. But on this cold and rainy morning, I look around and see so many of you and hear so many voices committed to making our country safer. All of you give me hope for the safety of my young daughter and son as they grow up, go to school, live their lives, and live their lives. It is because of all of us and the decades of advocacy that has come before us that our country will be safer. When Columbine happened, we were told by the adults that it would never happen again. Well, we were failed. Today, I'm here before the Supreme Court of the United States to make sure we don't fail our children by giving up the hard-won gains of a nation who is simply fed up.
No gun-free zones for our America's
I'm just fed up. It's been 20 years that my community had an issue. And I'm grateful for all of you for being here to honor through action. Action that says that we will not let our voices and the memories of our loved ones be cast aside. We will never lose sight of those we lost. So our vision is clear as to where we must continue to go. Thank you.
Armed security and police officers in schools.
Our next speaker is from the National Council of Jewish Women, Jody Rabin.
On behalf of American children, please end gun-free zones. You chose to be
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. So wonderful to look out and see you all here on this beautiful morning at the Supreme Court. I'm Jody Rabhan. I'm the Chief Policy Officer for the National Council of Jewish Women, and I'm here this morning on behalf of our 90,000 advocates and supporters across the country who work every day, every week, every month, every year, year in and year out, to keep their communities safe from senseless gun violence. And we do this guided by the Jewish value of kavod habriot. We believe in respect and dignity for all human beings. And throughout our history, we've done just that. We've worked with all of you out here on ballot initiatives in California, in Washington State, in New Jersey, passing those packages of incredible gun safety laws over the last 2 years, and so much more. And in the wake of federal inaction, we know that states are leading the way to save lives. Why? Because there is overwhelming public support for gun safety laws, right? Exactly. In 2018 alone, a record 67 new gun safety laws were enacted across the country in 26 states and in the District of Columbia right here. And we know they work. Studies show that legal restrictions on gun ownership and purchasing guns tends to be followed by a drop in gun violence. Yet the NRA wants the court today to challenge these state laws to roll back hundreds of gun safety laws across the country. Let me be clear, every gun safety law is at risk. Newsflash, America has a gun violence problem, right? Our movie theaters, our places of worship, our homes, our streets, our schools, festivals, concerts are not safe. And as I mentioned, the public support's doing something about it. We've made progress at the ballot box, we've made progress in state legislatures, and appellate courts around the country, which hear the majority of these cases, have found that these life-saving measures are consistent with the Constitution, with Supreme Court precedent, right? And in the majority of cases, we know that these courts have upheld the constitutional rights that we hold dear, including the right to live free from gun violence. Courts matter. And now the NRA wants the Supreme Court to roll back all of that progress and more. You know what I say? I say gun laws save lives. Say it with me. Gun laws save lives. One more time. Gun laws save lives. The NRA's extreme approach threatens our constitutional rights, our public safety, our lives. The Supreme Court must reject this attempt to roll back gun safety laws. Thank you.
We're rolling back infringements to create gun-free zones.
All right, our next speaker, a friend to the movement, a friend who's been working on this issue for decades. Is that nice?
Yeah. That's nice.
Josh Horowitz from the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence.
Hello! My name is Josh Horowitz. I'm with the Coalition to Stop Gun Violence, and we believe gun violence should be rare and abnormal. Most people know me as a quiet gentleman, but not today. I will be loud. We are in the midst of a multi-generational fight for our country. For years, the gun lobby said guns will keep us free, but that's not true. Community violence, domestic violence, suicide, mass shootings, and police violence limits where we go, how we worship, and what we do.
We won't take that anymore. Guns don't make us free. They bring death and violence and injustice. It's abundantly clear that guns don't keep us free. They confine what we do and where we go. In this decade, a strong and powerful movement has developed. We're millions strong, and we're gaining every day. We enact data-driven, public health-based laws to save lives. The empty rhetoric of the gun lobby is wrong. We save lives. We use public health. We are here to win. The recent elections in Virginia show just how strong we are. And now that it's clear that the gun lobby can't beat us at the ballot box, they've tried to engineer a victory behind us through a corrupt president, a corrupt majority leader. They're trying to do that to the court, but we're not going to let them. We shouldn't be here today. This case is moot, but the integrity of our democracy depends on the Roberts Court doing the right thing, and I think they will. But listen, we've worked too hard. We've worked too hard to give up now. We cannot turn back the progress. If the gun lobby thinks they can stop us, they're absolutely wrong. No matter what happens in this case, we are committed to making this country free from gun violence. When I started working on this, there was just a few of us. That was a couple years ago. But now there are millions of us. Our democracy depends on it. And because you are here, I am so proud to stand with all of you and bear witness to the fact that we will never give up. Thank you.
So you might recognize our next speaker from the main stage at the March for Our Lives, or from a CNN town hall where he had a conversation with President Obama. And you probably don't recognize him from all of the work that he's done in his own community in Chicago for years and years that never gets the recognition that it deserves. So please help me in welcoming and giving that recognition here today, Trevon Bosley.
Thank you. First off, I want to start off with a chant. Say, hey, everyday shootings are everyday problems. Come on now, y'all know that was weak. Everyday shootings are everyday problems. One more time so everybody in Washington hears us. Everyday shootings are everyday problems. Thank you. My name is Trevon Bosley, and I'm from the brave youth leaders of St. Sabina. And I'm here to speak for Chicago and those cities across the nation who are being shot and killed on a daily basis. Now, before I just go on a rant about the many injustices taking place in America, I want to make sure everyone truly understands why we are so upset. I want to ask just a few questions. What happens to a bus driver who constantly shows up to work late, and when they finally show up, they don't stick to their routes? They get fired. What happens to a salesman who can't make a single sale all year? They get fired. What happens to a security guard who can't keep a single thing secured? They get fired. You're probably wondering, how does any of this correlate with the situation at hand? Well, it's clear that for most professions in America, if you don't do your job, you get fired. And it seems that most politicians in Washington don't know this, but Capitol Hill is not exempt. Mitch McConnell, you are not exempt from the unemployment line. And trust me, when I say this, Donald Trump and the word jobless will be synonymous real soon. Now, this statement holds weight for more than just Mitch and Donald. This goes for all the people representing this country. When you allow over 35,000 people to die by gun violence every year, you're not doing your job. When you're separating kids from their parents and locking them in cages, you're not doing your job. When you sit by and do nothing while the incarceration rate of black people is 5 times that of white people, you're not doing your job. When you allow racism to run rampant throughout the country, you are not doing your job. And while we are here, let's talk about Chicago. I'm tired of hearing Chicago this and Chicago that from people who've never stepped foot on the south and west side of Chicago. We're tired of listening to people who only come to Chicago to see the skyline or see Navy Pier. People who know nothing about Chicago, but love to say, oh, Chicago has strict gun laws, or Chicago's violence is always gang-related. Well, allow me to clarify some things. 60% of guns recovered from Chicago crime scenes have come from out of state, which means that our so-called strict gun laws aren't effective if the states around us don't have any. Now, as far as Chicago shootings always being gang-related, my cousin, Vincent Avant, shot and killed while sitting in his car. Blair Hope, shot and killed while on the bus on his way home from school. Corey Parker, shot and killed around the corner from his home on the 4th of July. Sarkeisha Reed, shot and killed in her home while getting ready for school. Dante Smith, shot and killed at a block party. Dominique Willis, shot and killed while riding in a car with friends. Rolanda Marshall, shot and killed while sitting in a restaurant. Hadia Pendleton, shot and killed in a park near her school. And my brother, Terrell Bosley, shot and killed out church while getting ready for band rehearsal. Now, contrary to what many media outlets and officials want you to believe, these deaths weren't due to them doing anything wrong, but rather they were just living their lives as normal. The problems in the black and brown communities in Chicago are the same problems in nearly every city, black and brown community across America. Communities where school systems are underfunded and state penitentiaries are overfilled, where politicians are overpaid and anti-violence programs are under-resourced, where police are overtly racist and rarely held accountable, where all lives supposedly matter, but black and brown lives are taken on a daily basis. This is an American problem, and for too long she has not valued the lives of black, brown, and poor. The injustices we see on the daily are being blatantly ignored by those on Capitol Hill. The cries of the nation's children can be heard across the world, and you can't turn a blind and a deaf ear to the matter. Your job is to represent and serve all the people that call this country home. Remember that when you step in your office in the morning and when you go to bed at night. And I hope that on this day, the Supreme Court makes the proper judgment for the lives of its citizens. Thank you.
The pundits always talk about how we have a passion gap on our side of this issue. Do you guys feel the passion gap today? I feel like maybe the gap has shifted to the other side of the issue. I don't know. It just seems a little lopsided today. So we have one final speaker this morning, and I'm really pleased to introduce her today. And again, thank you all so much for being here and making a really strong statement this morning. I want to welcome now to the stage a survivor of the shooting in Parkland, Alea Eastman.
Good morning. My name is Alea Eastman, a college student, a black woman, and a survivor of the Valentine's Day 2018 shooting at Marjory Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. I am blown away by today's speakers. This morning we have heard from mothers, fathers, advocates, lawmakers, and of course, survivors. What unites us? We live in the United States of America where gun violence is a daily threat and occurrence, particularly in black and brown communities. I had planned out what I would do in a school shooting since my freshman year in high school. We'd always say at Marjory Stoneman Douglas, it was not a matter of when it would happen, it wasn't a matter of if it would happen, but it was a matter of when it would happen. The when was February 2018. There have been over 30 school shootings across the country since then. One of the latest, Saugus High School in Santa Clarita, California. The Saugus students marched out of their classroom last year in solidarity with my high school. This year, they sadly understand what that march was about firsthand. No matter what color you are, what school you go to, or where you live, gun violence is a reality. We are united in working to change that reality. But the NRA has used our justice system to advance a radical and irrational agenda that would potentially eliminate protections that have been hard fought that make our communities safer. They are working against us. This is a shame. This suit uses a law that no longer exists to push for policies and extreme interpretations of the Second Amendment that most of this country does not agree with.
Nobody agrees with the way New York City restricted people from carrying.
If the Supreme Court in some way advances the NRA's interpretation, It could eliminate or lessen the hundreds of gun safety laws passed by states and local governments to keep citizens safe, to keep us safe. In the year after the Parkland shooting, states passed approximately 69 new gun safety measures. Laws intended to stop experiences like mine, where I would be sitting in my 4th period Holocaust history class 1 minute, and then hiding underneath my classmate's body, Nicholas Dorrit, as the gunman shoots into my classroom, killing him and my other classmate, Helena Ramsey, the next minute. We will not accept students being shot in their schools. We will not accept families waiting to find out if their children will come home. We will not accept communities torn apart by bullets and violence. We will not accept the NRA's agenda. We will not accept any more gun violence. That's why I need you to join me in telling the NRA and the Supreme Court that this agenda is wrong. There can be no more Parklands, no more Saugus high schools, no more Sandy Hooks, no more Pulses, no more Las Vegases, and no more El Pasos. No more of the daily violence that isn't picked up in the news media, the violence that often affects minority communities. My uncle, Patrick Edwards, was shot in the back and killed in Brooklyn, New York when he was just 18 years old, which is a story that is far too similar to families in communities that are disproportionately impacted by gun violence. My classmates, Nicholas and Helena, should be here. My uncle Patrick should be here. The 2 students killed in Saugus High School should be here. They should have been at Thanksgiving dinner with their families last week. This morning, I want the justices to hear us, not in legal briefs or statements, but through the walls of the court, to hear that the American people, all of us, will not accept laws that make us less safe. We are fed up. I want them to hear enough is enough. Say it with me. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. Enough is enough. I want to thank you all for coming out this morning. We have made so much progress in this movement, and today we have shown once again that our movement is stronger than ever, and that we are ready to fight in every arena to pass and defend gun laws that keep us safe. Let's take this energy back into our communities and keep fighting for what we believe in, a safer future. Thank you.